The investigation into classified materials found at the Delaware home and former office here in Washington of President Biden continues, but now seems destined to fall into a familiar pattern of Washington scandal in a time of divided government. President of one party seeking to cooperate with an ongoing Justice Department investigation, while the House of Representatives, controlled by the other party, is trying to stoke the issue and force the White House to comply with requests for information. So with DOJ continuing its investigation, the White House says it's reviewing oversight letters from House Republicans and plans to respond in due course. Today, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre stressed the administration will let the Justice Department do its job.
One of the things that we have said for the last 2 years, when it comes to the Department of Justice, when it comes to legal matters, when it comes to legal issues, we have been very clear that we are not going to comment, we are not going to politically interfere, and that continues.
Joining us now to explore this a bit more and some other headlines of the day, CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang, who joins us from the White House North Lawn, and congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us from Capitol Hill. Weijia and Scott, happy Tuesday. Great to be with both of you. Let's start with you, Weijia. The latest from the White House regarding the ongoing docudrama and sort of how it is now responding to questions or dealing with what Republicans are saying about all of this.
Well, Ed, as you know very well yourself, sitting in that briefing room and talking to White House officials, they aren't answering many questions at this point. They are referring most of our questions to the Department of Justice. They are saying that they want to maintain the integrity and independence of the investigation, which at times begs more questions, because as an example, over the weekend, we found out that the president's personal attorneys went to his Wilmington, Delaware home to try to facilitate the delivery of documents to the Department of Justice. They discovered that there were even more pages discovered last week. They did not have a security clearance, and therefore, the White House says that's when they asked the White House counsel to get involved. The White House counsel went there and retrieved these documents and turned them into the Department of Justice immediately. So today, I pressed the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, about how that falls in line with what she herself keeps telling us every day, which is that they want to keep a very healthy separation between the White House and the DOJ investigation. Well, at this point, you have the White House counsel being the one who is handling this now classified material. Now, he does have a security clearance, but so do thousands of other people that could have done that for Department of Justice officials. That's just one of the many questions we have. We still are also trying to piece together the timeline of, when White House officials knew what they did, why they didn't disclose it to the public, along with a host of other questions that continue to mount as the White House gives us few answers.
And one of the ways we may get answers to some of those questions is in response to questions from Republican committee chairman up on Capitol Hill, Scott. The Oversight Committee is asking about this. The Judiciary Committee is asking about this. A few more weeks still until answers are due, but certainly they're out there stoking this as much as possible to keep the attention on it.
And let me give you two more committees looking into this, the House Armed Services Committee and the House Committee on Intelligence. And in fact, there would likely be hearings scheduled and on the calendar already if these committees had been organized yet, but they're still naming the membership, still getting the logistics in order. Then those committees will proceed forward, and no doubt there'll be hearings, and no doubt, Ed, there could be some turf wars. Every committee wants a piece of this investigation, but not all of them can have pieces of this investigation. We spoke with the top Republican on the House Committee on Intelligence, Michael Turner of Dayton, Ohio, who says he has asked the Director of National Intelligence to provide a damage assessment of what might have been exposed. What vulnerabilities might have surfaced because of these documents marked classified not being where they're supposed to be? This is just the beginning of a congressional investigation that truly, Ed, might span the entirety of the 118th Congress.
It sure could. And we should point out that request for a damage assessment is similar to one that was made after the revelations of the classified materials found at Mar-a-Lago last year. The ODNI, the Office Director of National Intelligence, is indeed conducting one in that case. No word yet on if one is underway on the Biden side of things. different cases, but the similarities to some extent do exist and are worth pointing out. Now, one other issue of a more substantive nature set to consume attention on both sides of Pennsylvania Avenue is the forthcoming debate over increasing the nation's borrowing limit. I think we have the numbers on this. We're about to hit about $31.4 trillion, which is the maximum amount, later this week. We should remind us quickly what the Treasury Secretary says starts on Thursday.
Well, our credit limit is going to end when it comes to how much money the U.S. can borrow, which, of course, is exactly what you're talking about, Ed. And just today, the White House doubled down on the fact that they do not intend on getting involved to facilitate what they are saying is really Congress's job. And so they are banking on lawmakers to come to an agreement, namely for Republicans to agree to raise the debt ceiling so the U.S. can continue to spend on its so-called, or I should say, credit card in a sense here. But the White House has said that, this is not something that they are willing to negotiate. Today, the press secretary said that, Republicans and Democrats worked on this together 3 times before during the last administration, so it shouldn't be an issue. But, Ed, that's not what's happening.
No.
And that is why, we continue to press about whether the president is going to get involved to try to avoid a default, which would be, a disaster, according to financial experts, because of the shock that it would send through the markets. And so, they are waiting for lawmakers to hash it out. But I'm sure, as Scott's just about to tell us, they're not doing that.
That's right, Scott. Banking on Congress could be risky. How, if at all, are they preparing to act on this?
Yeah, they're not. Weijia is right. I mean, the discussions aren't happening. They're talking past each other on both sides. There's been brinksmanship before with the debt ceiling. In fact, it's semi-regular, except in 2011 it was different. When the political complexion was the same as it is now, a Democrat in the White House, Democrats controlling the Senate, but Republicans in the U.S. House. They got so close to breaching the debt ceiling, it rattled the markets and rattled the economy. And here we are in 2023 with that same political complexion. Democrat in the White House, Democrats in the Senate, Republicans in the House. But the difference now is it's a Republican conference in the House that maybe is further to the right, with a higher composition of House Freedom Caucus members who say they want to negotiate over the debt ceiling. But rather than there being initial conversations over what to negotiate or what's on the table, there is the same position that there was in 2011. Republicans want to negotiate. Democrats say you can't negotiate over this, or it sets a dangerous precedent for future debt limit issues. So that's where we are as Thursday approaches, and immediately there is the potential for economic and stock market impact that will grow in severity as it gets closer and closer to whatever the more firm deadline is later this spring.
Which we should point out, it is not Thursday. It's that we hit the limit then, and the Treasury Department has said we can fiddle with the numbers and move money around and withhold payments to certain things until about June, is what the Treasury Secretary said on Friday. So we do have several more months of this potentially, but obviously everybody concerned about the future of the economy would like to see this done sooner. Scott, real quick, you are also tracking another case of incredible alleged political violence out in New Mexico, arguably another example of the increased weaponization of our politics.
The three of us have seen a lot of things over the years, never seen anything like this. Solomon Pena 3 months ago was running for the New Mexico State House. Tomorrow he'll be in court facing felony charges, accused of running a conspiracy after the election to target 4 local Democrats and have accomplices fire bullets into their homes as he sought to overturn the election results. That includes a county commissioner who he knocked on the door of weeks earlier and asked to decertify the election results. We're going through the police reports. They mention possible payments to the accomplices, that Pena might have been on one of the shooting sprees himself. His gun got jammed, but also that he encouraged the accomplices, Ed, to fire the bullets lower next time and earlier in the evening, so that the potential targets were less likely to be laying down or potentially sleeping. He's in court tomorrow. We're working through the police reports, a full report tonight on the CBS Evening News.
And we'll be watching. Scott MacFarlane at the U.S. Capitol, Weijia Jiang at the White House, thank you both.